Hotel family, welcome back to Matthew Daniels TV. I am your host, Matthew Daniels, the author of 16 published works and one of the greatest scribes of our lifetime. Today, we're going to be continuing our in-depth look into African American history during the time period of our enslavement and immediately after. And we're going to be doing it in our own unique way that you cannot find anywhere else on YouTube. We are going to be examining this history from the perspective and words of our ancestors themselves. Today's topic is Bloody Kemper Chisolm Massacre, 147-year-old mystery solved with the slave narratives, aka the oral histories. So if you'll give me just 1 second to get things set up, we're going to get into this, and I guarantee you're going to love what I have to share with you guys today. Give me just a moment to get my screen share up, and we are going to get into it. Good morning. I know it's early. I appreciate you guys tapping in this early in the morning. If you're watching the replay, I appreciate you tapping in to watch the replay. Anybody that come in, you know what, go ahead and hit that like button for me. Make sure you hit that subscribe button if you have not already subscribed to the channel. If you're interested in African American history, especially pertaining to the time period of our enslavement and immediately after, this channel is the channel for you. We're doing it how you cannot find it done anywhere else on YouTube. So let's get into this history, family. Again, we're going to be talking about Bloody Kemper, the Chisolm Massacre, and we're going to be using the Mississippi slave narrative / the oral history to unravel a 147-year-old murder mystery. That's right. We're going to be using the words of our ancestors to unravel a 147-year-old murder mystery. Now, why is this type of video needed, and why do I take the time to delve into the history of the slave narratives, aka the oral histories of our ancestors? Because what I'm trying to do is highlight for you guys the historical significance and the historical importance of the information that our direct ancestors left from us. Yes, there are millions of books that we can read about slavery and the time period immediately after it. There are millions of things that we can Google, we can look up online. We can listen to historians talk about it. You can listen to individuals like me talk about it. But it is something totally different when you realize you can find out about that history from our ancestors themselves who experienced it. And the more you study what our ancestors had to say about that period in time, the more you're going to see the historical relevance of it. There are things that we know now that we only know because our ancestors documented it inside of what we call the slave narratives, or what I also call the oral history. And there are some things that the traditional historical record has passed down to us that is not 100% accurate and true. And when we look into the slave narratives, aka the oral histories, we get the true account of events. And also, like what we're going to find out today, there are some things that are mysteries to the traditional version of history that we get. There are things that happen, right? And the causes of these things, the causes of these things, that the things that cause these events to take place are a mystery to the general public. And we can only unravel the mystery when we look into the records that our ancestors left themselves. And this video is going to highlight one of those accounts. And it is something that is colloquially called the Chisolm Massacre, and it is one of the reasons why a place called Kemper County, Mississippi, became known as Bloody Kemper. Okay, one of the first bloody events, mass murders that took place in this area of the United States that led to it being known as Bloody Kemper. So what we're going to be talking about today, and I'm going to give you guys all of the sources and all of the details, but just to give you an idea of what we're going to be talking about, in 1877, there was a man named John. Matter of fact, I'm going to show him to you real quick. There was a man named John William Gully, this individual right here, and he was murdered. Okay, he was murdered, and they blamed his murder on a man named William Wallace Chisolm, this individual right here. And since they blamed William Wallace Chisolm for the massacre of John Gully, they in turn massacred Chisolm, his daughter, and several other people in cold blood. And when the facts of the case actually played out, they determined that Chisolm did not have anything to do with the murder of John Gully, and they eventually blamed and put the crime on one of our ancestors, a man named Walter Riley. They said that he was the one that committed the murder. They hung him for committing the murder, and in fact, he pled guilty. He confessed to committing the murder, but no one knew why he committed the murder. And in order to explain the bloodshed, explain why they killed Judge Chisolm and his family, they came up with a story that said he hired our ancestor Walter Riley to kill John Gully. But even as he was about to be hung, Walter Riley maintained that Judge Chisolm had nothing to do with the killing of John Gully. But in the traditional account of history that is known, no one knows why Walter Riley actually killed John Gully, and that led to the massacre of Chisolm and his family. But our ancestor that I'm going to highlight in this particular video, one of our ancestors, a man by the name of Sam McCullum, he was an eyewitness to these events, and he left a record for us of the actual legit reason why Walter Riley killed John Gully. And since his reasonings why he killed John Gully did not fit with the narrative that the public wanted to run, it didn't justify the murder of Chisolm and his family. His the truth behind the murder of John Gully was hidden and it was suppressed. And the only way that you will be able to find out the truth of these matters today is by looking into the oral history of our ancestors. So what we're going to do first to get into this, we're going to be I'm going to show you guys which one of our ancestors we're going to be dealing with. Like I just mentioned, we're going to be looking into the Mississippi slave narrative / the oral history of our ancestor named Sam McCullum. And we're going to be getting the true history of Bloody Kemper. Now, we see from the very first paragraph of his slave narrative that I have on the screen, it says, "To those familiar with the history of Bloody Kemper, as recorded, the following narrative from the lips of an eyewitness will be hearsay. But the subject of this autobiography, carrying his 95 years more trimly than many a man of 60, is declared sound of mind as well as of body by the Hector Curry family, prominent in Mississippi, for whom he has worked in a position of great trust and responsibility for 50 years or more." Now, why they are starting it out like this is because in Kemper County, the what we know now as the Chisolm massacres, it was widely publicized. There were hundreds of people involved in this event. It was covered in the newspaper. Several articles over several years was ran about this. And again, it was a traditional murder mystery. No one knew, or so they claimed, no one knew the true reason why John Gully was killed. And thus, no one knew the true reason why Judge Chisolm was killed. And so, in the slave narratives of our ancestor, Sam McCullum, he tells us for the first time the real reason why Walter Riley, a mulatto man, killed John Gully. And so in the slave narratives is the only place that we can get the true reasons why all of this particular bloodshed took place. So for those of you who don't know, Kemper County, Mississippi is a county located on the central eastern border of the United States of Mississippi, on the U.S. state of Mississippi. As of the 2020 census, the population was 8,988, pretty small. Its county seat is DeKalb. Remember that name, it's going to come up in the narrative. The county is named in order of Reuben Kemper. The county is part of the Meriden, Mississippi Micropolitan Statistical Area. In 2010, the Mississippi Public Service Commission approved construction of the Kemper project, designed to use clean coal to produce electricity for 23 counties in the eastern part of the state. Let's go into the history. We're going to read a little bit about the history of Kemper County, Mississippi. In the wake of the county's founding, Abel Maston Key served as the first circuit clerk. Land in the area was developed in the 19th century by white planters for cotton cultivation using enslaved African Americans. Blacks have comprised the majority of the county population since before the American Civil War. The county continues to be largely rural. After the American Civil War and Reconstruction, racial violence increased as whites struggled to regain power over the majority population of freedmen and to suppress their voting. In the period from 1877 to 1950, Kemper County had 24 documented lynchings of African Americans, the third highest of Mississippi counties. Hinds and Leflore counties had 29 and 48 lynchings, respectively, in this period. In 1877, listen to this, in 1877, the Chisolm Massacre occurred. The murder by a mob of a judge, his children, and two of their friends while they were in protective custody in jail. That's the massacre that we're going to be highlighting here today that took place in this area of Mississippi known as Kemper County. Now, Mississippi, as early as the early 19th century, was a slave holding state. Okay, and actually the enslaved population in that area oftentimes was greater than the white population in that area. And so when the Civil War took place and freedom came to the enslaved African Americans in this country, the time period known as Reconstruction took place. Whenever you hear somebody talking about the Reconstruction era, they're talking about the time period immediately following the Civil War, and covering several decades after. They traditionally try to say that the Reconstruction era ended around 1877. Interesting to note, 1877 is when the actual Chisolm Massacre took place. But during the Reconstruction era, why they call it the Reconstruction era is because America was being reconstructed. It was going from a country where slavery was legal in a lot of places, and the African American, the Negro, the black man and woman was subjected, and it was being reconstructed into a society where everyone was free, and supposedly everyone had access to the same inalienable human rights. Blacks who had long been suppressed were beginning to get the opportunity to vote. Certain blacks were being voted into office, and they were beginning to hold political offices. And you had, for the first time, the political parties of the Democratic political party and the Republican political party. Now that the blacks as a whole were beginning to vote, they were beginning to battle each other, so to speak, for the black vote and to keep control of the United States. So in a lot of those states where Reconstruction was taking place, were in these southern states where slavery was just legal a couple of years ago. And so the individuals who still felt that slavery should be legal, they had simply lost the Civil War, they attempted to gain political positions of power and use those political positions of power to continue the subjugation of the freedmen, the newly freed Negro population. And regardless of what it looks like now, the individuals that were pushing for the subjugation of the African American population was the Democrats. In today's world, in 2024, most people believe on surface value that the Democratic Party is the party of the African American. Well, immediately following the Civil War and during the time period of slavery, it was actually the Democrats who were the stone cold white supremacists. And it was actually the Republican Party that was trying to end slavery. The abolitionists were Republicans. The individuals trying to give the Negroes rights and give them their rights of suffrage, aka voting rights, was the Republican Party. And so a lot of the freedmen, the newly freed Negro population, were supporting Republican candidates. And so in a lot of these southern states, you had the Republicans and the Democrats fighting each other in the time period of Reconstruction, because on a surface level, the Republican Party was trying to reconstruct America in a way in which the blacks could enjoy their inalienable rights, right? Taking it from the terms used in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. And the Democratic Party was trying to keep the newly freed African Americans suppressed. And so the Democrats and the Republicans, they were fighting each other, and a lot of times these fights became bloody, as we're going to see right now in this video. The individual that was murdered that we're going to be talking about, John Gully, he was a Democrat, and the man that they falsely accused for having him murdered, Judge Chisolm, he was a Republican. And so right here in Kemper County, while Reconstruction was going on, there was a lot of tension between the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. And these two men, Judge Chisolm and John Gully, the Republican and the Democrat, they had a lot of bad blood going on. And this eventually spilled over into murders, mayhem, and mysteries that we are going to use our ancestral records to unravel. Now, this is something I took offline. Is quoting a newspaper article where they talk about what's known as the Chisolm Massacre or the Kemper, Mississippi Massacre. Okay, or when you hear the term bloody Kemper, they're saying that because of all the blood that was shed. So let's get a little background on what the official report said, and then we're going to take a look at the key players in this account. Then we're going to be looking at the slave narratives of our ancestors, and I'm going to show you guys the mystery behind the murders that has never been revealed before. or I can't say never has been revealed before because our ancestor revealed it, but it has never been this knowledge has never been made mainstream. And if you never read the oral histories of our ancestors, you wouldn't know why all of this bloodshed really took place. And the reasoning behind this bloodshed taking place is really, really interesting. So look, check this out. They say on the evening of the 26th instant. Now, this all took place in 1877. So we're going all the way back in time to 1877, 147 years ago, when the murder and mayhem began. On the evening of the 26th instant, Mr. John W. Gully was assassinated on the road near his home. Mr. Gully had been in town and was returning home about twilight when within half a mile of his house was shot by an assassin on the roadside. The shot took effect in the neck, killing him instantly. The report of the gun was heard at his house, and he not coming immediately caused his son and a friend who happened to be at the house to walk up the road in the direction of town when they found the body of Mr. Gully lifeless in the road. The assassin had taken his hat, boots, and pocketbook. No clue could be had as to his or their whereabouts. Mr. Gully's body was on Saturday, the 28th, buried at the family burying ground near New Hope Church. So they're basically letting us know that one day, Mr. John Gully, who again was a prominent political figure for the Democratic Party in the area, and during the time period of Reconstruction, he was headed home one day, and an assassin shot him. An assassin hiding out on the side of the road, boom, shot him in the neck, killing him instantly. Now, the individuals at his house, he was close by his house, they heard the gunshot. And since while they were at home, they realized as time went on, he didn't show up at home when he was supposed to show up at home. They went out looking for him and they found his body. His hat was gone, his boots was gone, and some of his money was taken. And the individual that killed him was nowhere to be found. So we starting off, we have a murder mystery of a prominent man in Kemper County, Mississippi. The news article goes on to say, on Sunday morning, a warrant was issued for the arrest of several parties suspected of complicity in the murder. The sheriff arrested W.W. Chisolm, H.A. Hopper, and held them under guard. About 11 o'clock, a large number of excited and infuriated citizens assembled in town. The prisoners were conveyed to the jail for safety. Chisholm's family would go with him to the jail in spite of the remonstrance of the officers and others. About 2 o'clock p.m., J.P. Gilmer and C. Rosenbaum, for whom the sheriff held a warrant, were reported near the town and ready to surrender to the officers. The sheriff dispatched some prudent good citizens to bring them to the jail, which was being done, and when about 75 yards from the jail and on the way thereto, J.P. Gilmer was fired upon and killed. 3 shots were fired. The excitement was intense, and there was no controlling it at all. Soon after this, Mr. A. McLeland, who had made some very indiscreet remarks, came out of the jail when he was fired upon and also killed. The excitement was abating when a report was circulated that an armed body of men were nearby to rescue Chisolm. A rush was made for the jail. The sheriff, who had stood manfully up to this time between the crowd and the prisoners, was overpowered, and the posse forced away and an entrance made into the prison. When a number of shots were fired, the number and exact effect cannot be told. One man in the crowd, Dr. D.W. Rosser, was killed, and a son of Chisolm, a boy about 13 years of age, killed. Johnny Chisolm. Chisolm's daughter, Miss Cornelia, also received a severe wound in the wrist and probably some other slight wounds. About the time H.A. Hopper and N.W. Hopper were brought out of the jail and carried away unhurt, as it is said the parties were satisfied of their innocence and also of that of C. Rosenbaum. After a short time, the firing was again renewed when W. Chisolm was shot a number of times. His body was taken by some of the citizens and carried to his home where he had been under care of physicians. He is reported to be in a dying condition, and no hope is entertained of his recovery. The excited and infuriated people seemed determined to avenge the murder of Mr. John W. Gully, who was one of the leading citizens of the county, a man of influence and whose position was very prominent before the people. An attempt was made on the 19th of December last, 1876, to assassinate him on the roadside, which failed. He then received a severe wound. So basically, how this is all playing out is individuals are familiar with lynchings. Okay, whenever we talk about the history of our ancestors and we talk about the time period after slavery, we know that a lot of lynchings were taking place. And when they talk about lynchings, they would accuse our ancestors of heinous crimes, whether they committed these crimes or not. And they would lock them away in jail. And then a mob would form, and that mob would come, drag them out of the jail, either burn them alive, hang them, beat them, or gun them down. And a lot of times they would cut off their man parts. You understand what I'm saying? In order to further humiliate them. Just a second. I'm just looking at the chat. Sandra Askew, good morning. Good morning. Yeah, we up early. Trying to share something this early Wednesday morning. Thanks for tapping in. Good to have you. Brooklyn Zoo Hotel, Family Hotel. Good to see you. Good to see you. I hope both of you are doing awesome, and I hope your day and week goes well. For sure, for sure. And so this scene actually played out like a lynching, but this lynching happened to a white man and his family, and this man was actually prominent. Judge Chisolm was a prominent member of the community. So when John Gully was assassinated, they immediately thought that Judge Chisolm had something to do with it because, as I already explained, there was already beef during the Reconstruction era between the Republicans and the Democrats. And so there was already beef between the Gullys and the Chisolms and individuals that they were associated with. So when John Gully was murdered, they automatically thought that Judge Chisolm had something to do with it. So they gathered a posse, which certain accounts say amounted to hundreds of people. Excuse me. Those hundreds of people stormed his house. First of all, they surrounded his house with guns, demanded that he be taken to the jail, right? They ended up taking him to the jail. Gunfire erupted. They forced their way into the jail. They murdered several people, including his son. They shot one of his daughters. They gunned him down, and his daughter ended up dying from her wounds, and he ended up dying from his wounds as well. But if you notice, even the initial news reports are saying that he was only suspected of being complicit in the murder. And since he was gunned down in jail before even having a trial, then it was never determined if he was actually guilty or not. He never had any type of due process. They never did any type of investigation before him and his family was murdered. He was just blamed for the crime, killed for the crime. And so all of the investigations took place after the fact. But it was because of this right here, and because of several lynchings that happened to our ancestors in this area. But this right here led to that area being known as Bloody Kemper. And they call it the Chisolm Massacre because several members of the Chisolm household were massacred, really for nothing. And they found out later that he had nothing to do with the actual murder itself. Now, just to look at a couple of the players before we go into the oral history of our ancestors, this is a photo, however grainy. This is a photo of John William Gully, the man who was killed. He was born on July 17th, 1825, and he was a notable figure in Kemper County, Mississippi. He served as the sheriff of Kemper County, following in the footsteps of his father, Ezekiel Gully. The Gully family played an influential role in the area. John William Gully's life was tragically cut short when he was murdered on his way home from town just a mile away from his residence on April 26, 1877. His untimely death marked the end of the Reconstruction era in Mississippi. Now, the man that they accused of murdering him or having him murdered, or the man that they accused of having his hands in on the murder, is this individual right here, Judge William Wallace Chisolm. Okay, and it says that he was born in Morgan County, Georgia. His father died in 1851, leaving him the family guardian and protector. In 1847, the Chisolm family moved to Kemper County, Mississippi. In 1856, he married Emily S., daughter of John W. Mann, a prominent Florida lawyer. Up to this time, Chisolm had very little opportunity to pursue his education, but his wife gave him much assistance, and he made rapid progress. In 1858, he was elected Justice of the Peace, and in 1860, probate judge, which office he retained until 1867. During the Civil War, he was a pronounced Unionist, and notwithstanding this fact, he was kept in office, though many looked upon him with suspicion. For some time after the war, Mississippi, like the other southwestern states, was politically unsettled, the Negroes always taking the side of the Republicans. Chisolm was elected sheriff by the Republicans and was frequently in danger of his life from the followers of the Democratic Party. In November 1873, he was again elected sheriff for Kemper County, and this section became a great Republican stronghold. 4 years later, he was nominated as a representative to Congress but was defeated. John W. Gully, a leading Democrat, was shot and killed near Chisolm's house, and warrants were sent out for the judge's arrest. His wife, 3 sons, and daughter accompanied him, and the party was guarded on the way to jail by Angus McClellan, a sturdy Scotchman and staunch friend of Chisolm. As McClellan and the sheriff's orders left the jail to go to his own house, he was shot down, and the building, being left unguarded, was broken into by the mob. So we see some little background information on the key players, and we're starting to get a little information about how this Reconstruction era took place. And we can see that not only was the Reconstruction era hard on our ancestors, and it was most hard on our ancestors, but there were also beefs between the white community as well. The beef between Democrats and Republicans, it goes back far. And I've already said this, but I want to point out again that the time period of our enslavement and immediately after, it was the Republican Party that was doing things to make the lives of the newly freed African Americans better. And it was the Democrats trying to keep us subjected. Now, one can speculate on how those roles apparently changed in the mind of the African American in this country. But the facts remain that the Republican Party was the party of the Negro during those times. So now that we have a little background about where Kemper County, Mississippi is, now that we have a little background about why they call it Bloody Kemper and what they're talking about with the Chisolm Massacre, and now that we have some type of brief overview of the murder mystery that we're going to be uncovering, now we're going to actually get into the Mississippi slave narrative / oral history of our ancestor, Sam McCullum. And we're going to find out why exactly John Gully was killed. Okay, because it was not because Chisolm ordered that he be killed. We're going to find out why he was actually killed. And again, I submit you'll be hard pressed to find the true reasons in any sources that don't link back directly to what our ancestors had to say. And we believe the oral history of our ancestors. So let's get into it. The oral history of our ancestor, the slave narrative says, to those familiar with the history of bloody Kemper, as recorded, like I just read to you guys, the following narrative from the lips of an eyewitness will be hearsay. But the subject of this autobiography, carrying his 95 years more trimly than many a man of 60, is declared sound of mind as well as of body by the Hector Curry family, prominent in Mississippi, for whom he has worked in a position of great trust and responsibility for 50 years or more. While this old Negro may be mistaken at some points, the universal failing of witness, his impressions are certainly not more involved than the welter of local records. Miss Curry states that if Sam said he saw a thing happen thus, it may be depended upon that he is telling exactly what he really saw. Sam McCullum, ex-slave, lives in Meriden, Lauderdale County. Sam is 5 feet 3 inches tall and weighs 140 pounds. So the individual that he is currently working for, when this narrative is taken, when this interview takes place, is basically speaking highly of him, saying he's an honest individual. And if he says that he saw a thing happen, you know that he's telling the truth. So even though what he's going to say will confirm and also contradict some of the official record, the individual that he is working for is saying that they believe what he has to say. And this ancestor was actually on the ground when those murders took place. So we're getting an eyewitness account. The ancestor says the first town I ever seen were DeKalb in Kemper County. The Stevenson plantation, where I was born, weren't but about 13 miles north of DeKalb. I was born the 2nd of September in 1842. So the ancestor was born September 2nd, 1842. May your name live on forever and may your memory never die. The ancestor basically he gives us some of the history about what it was like living in slavery. There's multiple owners that owned them, and he tells us how he became the property of a man named Mr. Ed McCullum, which is where he gets the last name Sam McCullum from. His previous owner had got into a lawsuit over some work done by Mr. Ed McCullum, and his previous owner lost the lawsuit. And as the law stated, in order to pay what he owed, the owner of the ancestor Sam was able to pay his debt with some of his slaves. So the ancestor Sam and his mother were given to Mr. Ed McCullum as a form of debt payment. A lot of times our ancestors were given as forms of debt payment. You would see some of the slave narratives, they'll talk about, I read one where an individual said that he was sold and one of his brothers was sold and his mother was sold, and how he worded it, he said that he was drunk up by his former master. And he goes on to explain that one of his masters, one of the people that owned him, was a drunkard and he drank whiskey a lot. And so he would run up a major tab drinking whiskey. And when he would run up the tab to a point to where he couldn't pay it, in order to pay the debt, he would give away one of his slaves because they were his property. So a lot of times debts were settled between slave owners by the passing of our ancestors from one owner to the next. And so our ancestor here, Sam McCullum, he became the property of Ed McCullum to satisfy a debt. But it was for some surveyor work. It wasn't actually for a whiskey debt. But still is sad. It's sad nonetheless. Can you imagine? Can you imagine someone going into debt because they drink a lot or because they can't pay a bill? Imagine somebody, they can't pay their car note, right? They get behind on their car note. And so when the repo man comes to take the car, they're just like, okay, I owe you $5,000 on this car. I'm not going to be able to pay it. Hey, why don't you take little man over here? and you got a young man, 10 years old, he just get passed on to the next owner because you can't pay your car note. Such was the existence of our ancestors. Such were some of the horrors that they were forced to face. But so basically, the ancestor, he goes into some of that. Now, I'm not going to read all of that. We're going to skip to the interesting parts that deals with the topic. But that's how he came into the possession of the man that put him in the direct area where he could be privy to the information that's going to unravel this 147-year-old mystery. So the ancestor says, then I go to work for Mr. Ed McCullum in DeKalb when I ain't working for the gullies. So he's telling you that he also did some work. Now this was during slavery and even after. He would, our ancestors would like rent themselves out. They would do work for money instead of doing work for free, and the master got paid. They got paid. But he was actually in the area where the Gully family operated, and this ancestor actually did work for the Gullies. And the Gully family, again, John Gully is the man that was killed. So he's right there in the thick of it. He says, Mr. Ed was my young master, and Mr. Ed was my young master, and now he were the jailer in DeKalb. In fact, I'm gonna zoom in a little bit, help you guys if you want to try to read along. He says, I know the Chisolms too. Remember the Chisolm Massacre. We're getting into it. That's how come I seen all I seen and know what ain't never been told. I couldn't tell you that. Maybe I was the only one still living that were grown and right there and seen it happen. I ain't scared now. Nothing could happen to me for telling. Mr. Curry see to that. I just ain't never told. Them that belong to my race were scared to tell. Maybe it were all for the best. That were a long time ago. They give out things then the way they wanted them to sound, and that's the way they done come down. So the ancestor, right off the bat, he's letting you know that there was a conspiracy. When these events took place, there was a conspiracy to paint the narrative a certain way. And he's saying that he knows the truth of what happened because he was there and he's seen it all. But he never told the truth about what he's seen. He let the story that was running in the newspapers run because he was afraid, which makes sense. A lot of our ancestors, they, even though they had quote unquote rights immediately after our enslavement during the Reconstruction era, they really didn't have any rights, and lynchings were a normal thing. And even the Ku Klux Klan was very active around that time and in that area. He's going to talk about the Ku Klux Klan as well. And so what our ancestor is saying is that this wasn't just a random murder. This was a murder of a prominent man, John Gully, a prominent Democrat, and the Republican Judge Chisolm and his family were massacred by hundreds of other white Democrats and white supremacists and Ku Klux Klan members. And so the individuals that knew the truth, like our ancestor, they were afraid to say anything when these events took place because they didn't want to be murdered too for trying to speak the truth. You see these types of things happen right now today. An individual can know that the official story is lying to the public, but they don't want to go against the status quo. They don't want to become a target themselves, so they'll seal their lips. But then maybe 40, 50, 60 years after the event takes place, when they're old and they know that they're probably going to be dying soon, they just confess and be like, hey, well, you know what? This is what really happened way back then. We seen something similar with that, with the whole Emmett Till situation. Okay, Emmett Till several decades ago was murdered for, they say, whistling at a white woman, right? And as time passed, as decades passed, as people got older and were on their deathbed, the truth of that fateful night began to come out, and they found out that the story that had been told for years wasn't actually true, and it wasn't actually accurate. So what we have with the Chisolm massacre and the murder of John Gully, we have the same type of scenario. What they said happened, claiming that Judge Chisolm had something to do with the murder, and that is why they were legit. That's why they were justified in murdering him and his family. What they said happened isn't what actually happened. And since no one was arrested and no one was charged and no one was held accountable for killing Judge Chisolm, they didn't want the truth to come out that they had murdered an innocent man. And they really only murdered that innocent man because of political reasons. It was because he was a Republican, and the Republicans were working to help the Negro population. And so the Democrats and the white supremacists and the Ku Klux Klan, they just wanted an excuse to get him out of the way. Look what the ancestor says. It started with Mr. John Gully getting shot. Now, Mr. Gully was a leading man among the white Democratic people in Kemper, but they ain't had much chance for about 7 years. I disremember just how long, on account of white folks like the Chisolms running everything. Everybody will show it was some of the Chisolm crowd, but some folks know it were that nigger Walter Riley that shot Mr. Gully. But ain't nobody ever told the show enough reason why Walter shot Mr. John Gully. So he's talking about that political back and forth, that political tug of war that I was describing earlier between the Democrats and the Republicans. John Gully, being a Democrat, was a leading man in Kemper County, but he began to lose several campaigns that he ran because the Chisolms began running everything. So you have two prominent families, okay, on opposite sides of the spectrum, and the power is going from one family to the next family, and they're fighting back and forth, the Democrats and the Republicans, and they're trying to, give the Negroes rights, keep the Negroes subjected, give the Negroes rights, keep the Negroes subjected. And so what ended up happening is they eventually found out that the assassin of John Gully was a man named Walter Riley, who was actually a mulatto, but he was considered to be black, a Negro. He was the one that shot and killed Mr. John Gully. But they still blamed the Chisolm, saying that, okay, he only did it because Judge Chisolm wanted Mr. John Gully dead. But nobody ever told the real reason why Walter Riley killed John Gully. That was never explained to the public. They just let it hang in the air that he was commissioned to do so by Judge Wallace William Chisolm. Look, the ancestor goes on to say the Chisolms weren't Yankees, but they weren't white Democratic people. They do say the Chisolms and folks like them used to run around with the Yankees. Maybe that's how come they was different. Even for the Yankees come at all, when Mr. Chisolm was on us side, he would loud mouth about it. Now, again, we know that the ancestor was telling the truth because we know, according to the historical record, hold on just a second. Where's it? Right here. When they talking about Judge Chisolm, they say during the Civil War, he was a pronounced Unionist. And notwithstanding this fact, he was kept in office, though many looked upon him with suspicion. What's a unionist? Remember, when you're talking about the Civil War, you had the Union, the Yankees, against the Confederates. The Confederates were the southern states who wanted to keep slavery going, and you had the Unionists, quote unquote, the northern states, who was trying to bring an end, not necessarily bring an end to slavery, but ultimately bring an end to slavery to cripple the Confederacy so that they could bring those rebellious states back into the Union and maintain the United States as a whole, as opposed to allowing it to split up into two different countries. And so even though Mississippi is a down south state, right? A slave holding state with a grand majority of slave holders in the state, this man inside of Mississippi was a pronounced unionist. He was for the Union in the Civil War, which was part of the bad blood that continued over in the time period of Reconstruction that led to this grand murder. So all of this is political. I'm looking at the chat, man. Argument lead, what's up, man? Is that Suave Beezy, man? Is that my boy Suave Boss, man? What's good, family? What's good, man? Good to see you. Good to see you, family. For real, man. Long time, brother. Hope you're doing well. So we see that the ancestor is giving us accurate historical information, right? We don't have to hear it from nobody else. If we never read what Google had to say, we would know the political positionings of Chisolm and the political positionings of John Gullum. So the ancestor goes on to say, Mr. John Gully helped Mr. Chisolm get to be judged, but he turned out to be worse than them he had to judge. Mr. Gully and the others made him resign. I reckon maybe that's why he quit being a Democratic. Being a Democratic and started reconstruction with Mr. Gully. Now, sometimes our ancestors, they do speak in broken English, and in these slave narratives, they try to write it exactly how they said it, which I appreciate them for that. So we see how the historical record says, even though Mr. Chisolm, Judge Chisolm, was a pronounced unionist, they still allowed him to keep his office during and after the Civil War. But his intentions became known that he was totally against the Democrats and against the white supremacists, and he was trying to solidify power for himself and for his family. And the split between him and the Gullies and their supporters became greater and greater. And when Reconstruction went on, since Reconstruction was trying to reconstruct the United States into a system to where the blacks had rights, these two factions, these Republicans and these Democrats, were bumping heads. And so we see that the animosity between these two powerful political figures and the individuals that support them was getting stronger and stronger and stronger. Normally, when there is some type of a murder, it's not a spontaneous murder. It's not so much as an individual wakes up one day and just goes and murders somebody across the street. A lot of times when the individual murders that person across the street, things have been building up for a while. And whereas when the murder takes place, everybody may not know all of the incidents that led up to the murder, but there are several incidents that lead up to the murder. Now, our ancestor is going to give us some of the details about why this murder took place and what led up to this murder. And we're going to see that these political parties were being run like the mafia. So look, the ancestor says, come the surrender, the surrender of the Confederate Army to the Union Army. Whenever you read in our oral histories, aka the slave narratives, and they talk about surrender, they're talking about the end of the Civil War when the Confederate Army surrendered to the Union Army and waved the white flag. Come to surrender, Mr. Chisolm, he got to be a big leader on the other side. And he seen to it that a lot of the white Democratic men got kept from voting, and a lot of niggers step up and vote like he told them. They were scared not to. So the Chisolms kept getting all the big places. So here we see the ancestor describing the political fight between the Chisolms and their supporters and the Gullies and their supporters. And so they're beginning to hate Judge Chisolm even more because he's going directly against the white Democrats. And the white Democrats are the white supremacists. They are the KKK. That's who they are. They are the KKK is the ex-patty rollers. Whenever you hear about or do your studies about our ancestors during slavery, you're going to hear about the patty rollers. And whenever they talk about the patty rollers, what they're talking about is when our ancestors would go from one plantation to the next, they would have to have a pass. If they were caught without a pass, the patty rollers were kind of like the police officers, but they were only there to police the Negro population. They were only there to police the slaves. And so if they caught a slave without a pass, they would beat them. If a lot of our ancestors were gathering somewhere, they would kick in the door, ask everybody for a pass to be attending the meeting, attending the party, or whatever it is. If somebody didn't have a pass, they would beat them. When our ancestors were trying to escape on the Underground Railroad and make it to the north, make it to either the northern states or make it to Canada, they were afraid of being caught by the patty rollers. That's who would catch these ones trying to escape, beat them, torture them, drag them back to whatever plantation they escaped from. So when the Civil War ended, you technically didn't need a patty roller anymore because the days of slavery was over. Slavery was no longer legal. So those patty rollers became the KKK, and they also became what we know today as the regular police officers. They were just policing everybody, quote unquote, but they were being more harsh on the African American / Negro population. But more specifically, those patty rollers immediately formed themselves into the KKK, the Ku Klux Klan. The Ku Klux Klan was mainly operating during the time of Reconstruction. That's when they were formed immediately after slavery. So the Ku Klux Klan is the patty rollers. The patty rollers are the white supremacists. The Ku Klux Klan are the white supremacists, and the white supremacists were the Democrats, plain and simple. And so when Reconstruction happened, the Republicans started getting the blacks to vote for them. The white supremacists, the Democrats, they didn't like it, and so there was beef between the Republicans and the Democrats that often got violent. They were not only violent to the Negro population, they were also violent to each other. The ancestor goes on to say, a lot of widows and folks like that what couldn't help themselves, lost their homes and everything they had. And this widows is widowers. He's basically trying to say widowers, a lot of widowers, individuals whose husbands were dead, and folks like that what couldn't help themselves, lost their homes and everything they had. The papers the grand jury make out about it was stored in the sheriff's office. The sheriff give out that his office done been broke open and all them papers stole. And so basically that's just people being corrupt. They were corrupt. People were losing their property, they were losing their houses, people were being arrested, people were being kept from voting, etc., etc. But it was all employed by these mafia-like Republicans and Democrats trying to seize power in these southern states during the time period of Reconstruction. It was a vacuum of power. They goes on to say, then Mr. Chisholm's brother got himself appointed sheriff, and he made Mr. Chisholm deputy. That's when he started running things show enough. Next thing you know, Mr. Chisholm is the show enough sheriff himself. So we see not only William Chisolm, the man who was murdered with his family and blamed for the death of John Gully, him and his brother, several other the family members, they started using the black vote to get themselves voted into positions of power in this particular area. That was their power strategy. They used the platform of the Republican Party to get the blacks behind them. They tried to subjugate some of the white people and keep the white people from voting, right? Keep the white people from voting, the white supremacists from voting, get the blacks to vote how they tell them to, and sway the election. Just basically just like they do now. You seen when Joe Biden was running to become president, they wanted to pander to the blacks to get their vote. Really, the Republicans and Democrats, they really kind of battling each other, and then they use the minorities to try to win the election. You remember Biden was, you ain't black if you don't vote for me, trying to get the blacks to vote for him. You had Kamala Harris trying to talk about her quote unquote black roots and not her Indian roots to pander to the blacks, to get the blacks to vote for him. But it's all a power struggle amongst those Democrats and Republicans, and they're using the blacks, they're using the Negroes, they're using the African Americans to secure positions of power so that they can orchestrate their grand schemes. And a lot of them they criminals. They just want to support their criminalistic schemes. And so this is exactly what was going on back then. So look, they say, then he gathered all his kinfolks round him, and they make out a blacklist. So once Chisolm and his family took those positions of power, they already got money, they already got prestige, they already got a good name, and there's a lot of them. So once they secure power, once they secure these political seats, the ancestor says they make out a blacklist. What is the blacklist? Check this out. The ancestor says the folks' names that were on it were the ones the Chisolms didn't need. It was talked around that the first name on that list was Mr. John Gully's name. A heap of Ku Klux's names were on it too. Mr. Chisolm sent the Ku Klux's names to the governor and expect him to do something about running them out. But of course, he couldn't do nothing about that because it were a spirit. But over now and then somebody, what's names were on that list, get shot in the back. Again, but that's not over, that's every, I'm sorry. But every now and then, somebody what's name were on that list get shot in the back. So the Chisolms was gangsters. Once they get their political power, once their family is holding positions, they make a blacklist. They make a list of basically their enemies. John Gully's name was on that list, and the Ku Klux Klan members' names was on the list. Why? Because they the Democrats. They it's like Bloods and Crips. They the quote unquote ops, if you use it in this type of term. So they made a list of their ops. They made a list of their opposition. They made a list of their political opponents, the individuals that they wanted to take out. Now, they didn't have plans on killing all of them, but what they did, they went to the governor of Mississippi with the list, with the names of some of the Ku Klux Klan members, and tried to get them run out of the area. Why would they want to get them run out of the area? Well, for one, again, they're the ops. They're the opposition, but also if you can run them out of the area, then you're also swaying the vote, because the vote boils down to the number of people that are casting their vote. You understand what I'm saying? It's similar to how they would redistrict an area so that they could get more votes on one side and less votes on the other side. So what the Chisolms did, they made a blacklist of their enemies, and they made a list of individuals that would go against their designs, and they tried to get them either whacked or they tried to get them run out of Kemper County. And they went to the governor trying to put legal cases on them. Look, these are Ku Klux Klan members. They running around, they lynching blacks, they doing this, they doing that, right? To get them run out so that they could no longer influence the vote. And if they can no longer influence the vote, then the Chisolms and their people could win more elections and they could keep more power. It's a power struggle. Okay, and the ones that they couldn't get run off, the ancestor says that every now and then, some of the people whose names on that list, they would get shot in the back. And you know that's true because as soon as John Gully died, the his supporters and the Ku Klux Klan members, they didn't want to hear nothing. They automatically was like, hey man, Judge Chisolm has something to do with it. We finna go murk him, and anybody that try to stop us, we're gonna murder them too. Because they obviously knew that the Chisolms was having things like this happen. They were having people get shot in the back. So when Mr. John Gully gets gunned down about a mile away from his home one night, they automatically like, man, look, this Chisolm, but he has gone too far because now he's whacked one of the head guys. You can't whack the Godfather. You maybe you can whack one of these low-level Ku Klux Klan members, but you can't whack one of the top dogs. And one of the top dogs was John Gully. So they came to murder Chisolm, murdered him, and murdered some of his family. But again, Chisolm had nothing to do with John Gully being murdered, and the only place we're going to get this real information is from our ancestor. But we see he was right there on the scene because he has all of the correct information. Check this out. Before the election come in November, it must have been in 75. 75 is 2 years before the massacre. The niggers had been voting and doing everything the Chisolms say. They were still harping back to that 40 acres and a mule they were promised, what they ain't never got. Now, a lot of people have heard about 40 acres and a mule, that our ancestors were promised 40 acres and a mule when slavery ended. That's a 100 or 1,000 or 5,000% fact. They promised them 40 acres and a mule. They never gave it to them. And any of our ancestors, not any, but the majority of our ancestors that were given something, it was taken from them shortly after that. The Union Army came into the South. They took over the states that were run by the Confederacy. When the Confederate Army surrendered, they then made a deal with the federal government. And it was like, okay, we surrendered. And they made a deal with them. And it was like, hey, but just get out of our business. All right, y'all won. We back in the Union. But what we want y'all to do is get out of our business, leave these southern states. And when they left them southern states, it got real bad on our ancestors in them southern states. They started lynching, killing, beating, taking homes, taking land, robbing, pillaging, and plundering. And they started trying to make our ancestors pay because they lost the Civil War. But a lot of times when you read the slave narratives, when you read the oral histories of our ancestors, you're going to see that a lot of them mentioned they knew about the 40 acres and the mule, but they never got it. And I'm of the opinion that there's some kind of way. Now I don't know how to do it because I'm not a lawyer, but there's some kind of way that this could be used in the whole reparations conversation, because there are records of what the federal government said they were going to do, and it has to be a way that we can hold them accountable to those records. But that's another topic for another day, and it's really a topic for somebody that's more knowledgeable about the law than I am. I just know I'm all for reparations. They God damn it, they need to pay what they owe. They promised, even if the reparation is 40 acres and a goddamn mule. I don't know what I would do with a mule today, but I know what I'd do with 40 acres. You understand what I'm saying? Even if it's that, man, they gotta pay something. But anyway, get back to the mystery reveal. Look, he goes on to say it would turning out to be just the same with everything else Mr. Chisolm had been a promising to give them. They ain't never got none of it. The white Democrat folks won that election. So what happened was Mr. Judge Chisolm was lying to the Negro population, saying what he was going to give them. And so the Negroes came out, they was voting for him, just like we do now. We vote for these people who promise us stuff. Chisolm never made good on any of his promises. So in the next election, the white Democrats, they won the election because Chisolm lost a lot of the Negro vote because he was not making good on what he promised to do for them. Just like, how it go now, it's a tale as old as time. They promised the African American community something. We turn out in droves to vote for them. We get them in office. They never follow through with what they promised in their campaigns. And so, we switch on them, we turn on them, we don't vote for them no more. And we continue that cycle and rarely ever get anything. But anyway, the ancestor goes on to say, soon, Mr. Chisolm run for something or other, and he got beat bad. Then he was mad, sure enough. He went to Jackson to see the governor about it. Soon, a heap of white Democratic men in Kemper got arrested for something or another. So Chisolm went back to the governor when he began to lose his elections because he no longer had a lot of the support of the blacks because he was not making good on his campaign promises. He went back to the governor, and whatever he said to the governor got the white Democratic men in Kemper arrested. A lot of them began being picked up and being arrested. And so now you see this feud between the Democrats and the Republicans is building up more and more and more. You can imagine some of the talks when they sitting around, they drinking their whiskey. They like, that damn Chisolm doing this, that damn Chisolm doing that. My cousin just got arrested. My brother just got arrested. My uncle just got arrested. But it's all a political game. It's all a political game. So this is the scene leading up to the murder of John Gully. So the ancestor says, then Mr. John Gully got shot, and everybody was sure the Chisolms done it because of everything that had been going on. This is why they were sure the Chisolms done it. And they say everybody was that mad. Chisolm and them had to go to court, but they were slippery as eels. And Walter Riley, the Negro, his name come out. He were a nigger. They give out at the trial that Walter was hired to shoot him by the Chisolm folks. That was the reason, but they was blood for folks' eyes at that time. So I'm sorry, he says that was not the reason. So look, now check this out. Now we get into the actual murder. So Mr. John Gully, he gets shot down. Everybody blames it on the Chisolms. They say, we know that the Chisolms done it because they've been doing all this beefing back and forth. And so the Chisolms, they wanted to take the Chisolms to court about it and hold court. And eventually they got them, and they ended up murdering the Chisolms. But what happened was the name of Walter Riley came out as the man who killed John Gully. And so what they tried to do, they tried to get Walter Riley to confess that he killed John Gully because the Chisolms told him to, and that they paid him to do it. But the ancestor is saying that wasn't the reason. And even Walter Riley said that that was not the reason why he killed John Gully. But everybody was already seeing blood at that time. They was already seeing red at that time. And since they had already killed Chisolm and his family, by the time they started harassing Walter Riley about it, they needed him to confess to validate why they murdered this man Chisolm and his family. Looking in the chat, L Bigfoot, Grand Rising family, Grand Rising, Hotep and Shalom to you too, family. Thanks for tapping in. Thanks for tapping in. Now look, check this out. I'm gonna do something for y'all. Let's get out of here. Hold on. Let's get out of here. And we're finna go to some of the newspaper articles. We're gonna go to some of the newspaper articles that came out during that time period. Let's see which one you want to look at first. It's December. Okay. When was this one? May. Okay, yeah, I think this one of the first ones. Yeah. Oh, nah, let's not do that one yet. Okay, so let's go to this newspaper article. So what this is the Van Wert Weekly Bulletin. Now, this is a actual newspaper article from December 21st, 1877. Now, remember, the murder took place in April of 1877. So this is several months after the fact. But what happened was, remember, John Gully is killed. He's buried on a Saturday. Then that Sunday, they come for Chisolm because they're blaming Chisolm for it. He ends up being carried off to jail. Several people are shot. The mob rush the jail cell. They shoot him. They shoot his daughter. They shoot his son. They shoot and kill several other people. And Chisolm eventually dies from his wound. And his daughter, she ends up dying from her wounds as well. Now, after this murder took place, they find out, the name comes out of Walter Riley. Now, Walter Riley is a Negro. He's a black man. It comes out that he actually committed the murder. So when it comes out that he's committed the murder and he confesses to committing the murder, now they have a problem. They're like, okay, wait a minute. This mob of several hundred people just gunned down Chisolm. They gunned him down. They gunned down his daughter. They gunned down his son. And they gunned down several of his supporters at the jail because they blamed him for killing John Gully. Now we have a problem. We have this Negro man, Walter Riley, saying, you know what? I'm the one that actually killed John Gully. Y'all got the wrong man. So everybody wanted Walter Riley to say that Chisolm paid him to do it, told him to do it so that they can justify why they killed an innocent man. But Walter Riley maintained that Chisolm had nothing to do with it, and they never really published why he killed him. If Chisolm didn't tell him to, they was like, well, why did you do it if it wasn't because Chisolm told you to? But they never wanted to publish the real reason, because if they published the real reason, they would have to confess, right, that they killed Judge Chisolm for nothing and that they murdered his family for nothing. And the people that murdered him would have had to be held accountable. So they buried that. Because the Democrats came back into power, the Ku Klux Klan came back into power, and they buried the truth so that they would not have to punish the people that murdered their political rival. So look, check this out. We're going to go to some of these newspaper articles. Now see this headline. It says, Kemper baffled. Extraordinary scene at a Mississippi gallows. The load of guilt settled firmly upon the Kemper County chivalry. A much desired confession that was not obtained. A much desired confession from Walter Riley. okay, that the ancestor is just telling us about. The ancestor told us that Walter Riley's name came up. Look, it says, another act in the series of Kemper tragedies has just closed, and the body of Walter Riley lies in the soil of the sandhill and under the pine boughs, where at 11:20 a.m. today he met his fate. This was the first view of a hanging. This was my first view of a hanging, and though I have seen death in many shapes, I never saw a man approach eternity with such perfect bearing of a hero, in full health and in the prime of life, in his sober senses. And after nearly 2 hours, literal torture from questioners, this criminal died with a resignation equally removed from sullen despair, brazen hardihood, and maudlin sensibilities. So they're talking about the execution, the hanging of William Riley for the murder of John Gully. Look, they say in this man's consciousness, Riley lay hid the key to the Gilmer and Chisolm tragedy. Gilmer was one of the other individuals that died alongside the Chisolms. With one word, this mulatto, William Riley, this mulatto might have brought joy to hundreds in Kemper County, but that word he declared he could not honestly speak. If he had only said that Chisolm and Gilmer instigated him to assassinate John W. Gully, he would then have justified the murderous mob of April 29th and brought relief to many a sore conscience. Hence, the extraordinary scenes at the gallows today. So basically, they were trying to get him to confess that Judge Chisolm had something to do with it, but he refused. And so what we have here, interestingly enough, we actually have the conversation recorded of William Riley at the gallows, where they were trying to get him to confess that Chisolm hired him to do the killing. And we can see him, we're going to see him standing firm and telling them over and over and over again for the at the tune of maybe about 2.5 hours. They demanded that he tell them that Judge Chisolm hired him to kill John Gully, but he kept telling them that's not what happened. That's not what happened. That's not what happened. But they had already murdered Chisolm, so they needed this man to confess. But he stood true, and he told the truth, and he he never lied on Chisolm when he could have easily lied, but he didn't. So what we're going to do now, we're going to look at what this man actually had to say at the gallows, and then we're going to finish looking at what the ancestors tell us, and we're going to find out the real reason behind the murder of John Gully, and it's going to shock you, family. I'm telling you. When you see what led to all of this murder, you're going to be like, wow, that's crazy. I never would have imagined it. It blew my mind too when I was researching all of this. So let's get right into it. He says, Dr. Fox and myself and the carpenter pointed to the coffin in the rear end of the cart, kindly suggested that I might rest my paper on it to take down his last words, to take down the last words of William Riley. Glancing around the throng, I saw that my presence there had excited immense curiosity, not altogether unmixed with delight, and as the guard in a minute had scattered among the throng, 2 or 3 of the ruder sort crowded up and whispered, "Take down every word he says. He'll confess, I tell you, he'll confess. Confess who put him up to it." And in a moment or two of preliminaries, such murmurs ran around the throng as, "Now you'll hear the truth about the Chisolm and John Gully. He'll tell it all. He said he would. He'll tell who paid him for it and gave him the gun, etc." So the scene, they are taking Walter Riley to the gallows being the instrument where he will be hung by the neck until dead. There are hundreds of people in Kemper County out there because they all want to hear Walter Riley confess that Judge Chisolm paid him to murder John Gully. And they're all out there. They're all out there to hear this confession. So imagine a sea of hundreds of Kemper County residents. Murder is on everybody's mind. All of the events leading up to the murder is on everybody's mind. They have seen these events unfolding during the Reconstruction period. They've seen the events of the Civil War. They've seen the Republicans fighting the Democrats. They've seen John Gully and his contemporaries taking political offices. They've seen the Chisolms and their friends taking political offices. They've seen this blacklist being passed around. They've seen Chisolm going to the governor, having the friends of the Gullys and the Ku Klux Klan members arrested. They've seen all of this. They've seen and heard of John Gully being gunned down on his way home. They've seen and heard about the Chisolms being ransacked at the jailhouse, being gunned down, him, his daughter, his son, and several other individuals. And now they have a man, a black man, William Riley, or Walter Riley, who has confessed to the murder of John Gully. And so they are saying that, okay, finally, now that he's about to die, men who are about to die tell the truth. He is going to confess to us, and we will know finally that truly Chisolm was rightfully murdered because he paid Walter Riley to do it. And it would justify the actions of the white Democrats and the Ku Klux Klan members who lynched him and murdered his family. That's the scene. That's what everybody is there for, the confession. Look, being asked by the sheriff if he had anything to say, asking the convicted Walter Riley, the condemned replied, "A great deal. I want to talk about an hour." And again, there was a stretching forward of necks and a general murmur, "It is coming, it is coming." Then said the sheriff, "Men, Walter Riley will speak to you. Let all be attentive." And the prisoner stepped to the front and bowing gracefully spoke as follows. "Well, I stand here on the brink of eternity to address my old neighbors and friends for the last time. But I feel that, wicked as I have been, I am freely forgiven and am going to a merciful God. I have been a wicked man, but now I feel no fear of the great God, and only sorrow for those I leave. For my poor old mother, whose heart is almost broken this day, and for my wife and 3 poor little children away up in Tennessee." At this point, the prisoner faltered a moment, but in a moment resumed in a calm and dignified tone. He faltered because he was speaking of his mother, his wife, and his children. "I have been a bad man, and you see it has brought me to a bad end. My grave is dug in the woods as though I was a wild man, and my portion is among the despised. I am not to be laid to rest with my race, nor numbered as one among the dead of the people. But that gives me no concern, for God will raise me up even from this sandhill in the pine forest, and I will stand with you all on that awful day. I fear not the face of this congregation, for I am soon to stand before a mightier congregation than this earth ever saw. I forgive all who have injured me and beg forgiveness of all. I bless my friends and I bless my enemies. I am guilty of these 2 murders, and I alone am guilty. But I have truly repented and hope for pardon." The prisoner here exhorted at great length and several times repeated his confession of having killed Bob Dabbs in 1871, the crime for which he was convicted, and John W. Gully last April, then kneeled and offered a fervent prayer. He then confessed again and was silent. So what they're talking about, these two murders, is Walter Riley has confessed to killing John Gully, and he confessed to killing another man in 1871, a man by the name of Bob Dabbs. Now, I'm going to wait to explain who Bob Dabbs is, because the ancestor explains who he is in the slave narrative, aka the oral history, and I don't want to spoil it for you guys. So he is confessing to the murder of two men, and he's saying he did it on his own. But they want him to say that Judge Chisolm told him to do it. Look, Sheriff, would any of the people like to ask Walter a question? So now the sheriff is asking the crowd of hundreds of people, do they want to ask the condemned man any questions? Then ensued a performance, the like of which probably was never before witnessed at any legal execution. A murmur of questions rose on all sides, a dozen talking at once, till the sheriff said, "Let Dr. Fox talk." Dr. Fox: "Walter, you told me when we last talked that you killed John Gully and that you were alone. Was that correct?" "It was." "Were you hired to do it?" "No, sir." "Remember, Walter, you are going into eternity soon, and if you can speak a word to relieve the minds of the people, do it. Please do it, for your own sake and for the sake of this distracted county." From all sides, the cry was repeated. "Tell us, Walter. Tell us why you killed John Gully. Tell us who got you to do it and relieve the minds of the people." "Well," hesitatingly, "I might say I was persuaded to do it, but only by bad company." "Walter, Walter," almost shrieked an old man in the crowd, "don't you know there is no hope of heaven for you if you go into eternity with a lie on your mouth?" "Yes, I know that." "And don't you know that if you keep back the truth, it is as bad as a lie?" Let me scroll back up. I want y'all to get this. I want y'all to get the scene. I want y'all to feel it. Sheriff impatiently: "Yes, yes, Walter understands all that." Old man in the crowd: "Then let him speak and relieve the people. God will not forgive anybody who keeps back the truth." And from all sides again came the appeal. "Tell us, Walter, what led to the murder of John Gully?" "Well," a long pause, "I was persuaded into it." Who persuaded you?" "Well, only bad company." "What bad company? Who was it?" "Well, I call all that bad company that leads a man to drinking, and from that to murder." "Oh, dear, dear, dear," groaned the old man. "He's going into the presence of God with a lie in his mouth." I now saw that Dr. Fox was deeply affected. So he's steady telling the crowd, "I killed him on my own. Nobody told me to do it. Nobody paid me to do it." And when he said that bad company led him to do it, basically he says the bad, he called anything bad company that leads a man to drinking, and from that to murder. Basically saying he had his own reasons for murdering the man. He was drinking, getting drunk. It was like, "Hey, I need to murder John Gully. I'm going to explain why in a minute. Hold tight. Stay with me. Don't leave the video. I'm going to give you the mystery shall be revealed. I promise you that." But he's telling them he was drinking. He felt like he wanted to murder him. So he went out. He hid on the side of the road. And when John Gully was heading home, he popped him. Nobody else had anything to do with it. But while the crowd is so hell bent on getting him to implement Judge Chisolm, is because they've already murdered Judge Chisolm. They've already murdered him. And so they need an excuse for why they murdered him. And look, and here I take occasion to say that he appears to me the most intelligent and high-minded man I have met in this county, and I confess myself under great obligations to him while here. So this goes on like this for a while. They end up asking him, well, where did you get the gun from? And he says that he got the gun from a man named Jack Hezzy, and this threw them into a frenzy as well, because the man, Hezzy Jack, that he says he got the gun from, they says that he worked for Chisolm, so they think they have some type of connection between Walter Riley and Chisolm, a connection that they didn't really have. But look, he says, yes, said the doctor. I believe Walter will tell me. Whose gun was it, Walter? Asking him whose gun did he use to kill John Gully. And he responds, I got the gun from Hezzy Jack. Aha, aha, ran round the crowd. It's coming now. He'll tell all about it now. But he didn't. At any rate, he did not tell what they wanted to hear. He said that he got the gun from Hezzy Jack and that he knew that Jack worked for Judge Chisolm. Then Dr. Fox came to the direct question. Did you see Judge Chisolm or Gilmer about it? No, sir, never. Did they send you any word? No, sir. If they did, I never got it. So over and over and over again, he's telling them that nobody told him to kill this guy, but they kept this going up for about 2 hours or over 2 hours, and he basically kept telling them the same thing. Now, the closest he got to telling them the truth of the matter that will come out in the slave narrative is here. Hold on just a second. Let me find it. Where he basically says, he basically tells them why he killed him. I mean, he told the people. They just didn't want to accept it. It may be in another news article. I'm gonna see if I can find it. But he basically says that, hey, he, for whatever reason, he heard that John Gilly was after him. That's all he heard. I mean, he heard John Gilly was after him, so he smoked him. Plain and simple. Give me just a second. Maybe that may be in another newspaper. Oh no, here you go. Look, they say, Walter, don't you see that these people are troubled in their minds? In your mouth lies the issue of life and death to the persons here. You may save the innocent by pointing out the guilty. You have to die. No one here can help or hurt you. Tell us if you have any other knowledge and give relief to the innocent and the troubled. But the prisoner, with the same calm, dignity, and measured tone, without a trace of fear, replied, Doctor, I knows I's got to die. Man can't save me. I only am guilty. A young man spoke. Whose gun did you kill him with? Well, it was a gun I had. But whose? Well, one I had. The driver of the cart that carried him in his coffin. Did you bring it from Tennessee when you came to kill John Gully? I didn't come purpose to kill him. I was working down this way on the railroad. That's how I came to be here. Now here it is. Then why did you kill him? He's saying, I didn't necessarily come. I wasn't planning on killing him. That ain't why I came back from Tennessee, where his children and his wife was at. He say, man, I came down here because I was working on the railroad. So they asked him, well, why did you kill him? Why did you kill John Gully? He says, well, I heard he was after me. Again, the blear-eyed old man sang out in a sort of whining tone, God can't forgive anybody who keeps back part of the truth. So since he was not saying what they wanted him to say, they believed nothing that he was telling them. He clearly told them that he had went to Tennessee. He had a wife and children in Tennessee. He came down to that area because he was working on the railroad. And when they asked, why did he kill him? He said, well, I heard he was after me. I want you guys to remember that sentence and remember that statement. All right. I want you to remember that sentence and remember that statement. So what we're going to do now, I thought that was real interesting. And I wanted to go into the actual newspaper reports to show you guys what was being said about this event during that time, and to show you how it lines up exactly with what the ancestor was telling us. Because another thing I like to do with this channel in these videos is I like to show you guys the historical reliability of the slave narratives, aka the oral history. So I'm gonna get a drink of my coffee, and then we're going to get back into the record of our ancestor, and I'm going to reveal to you what has not been revealed to the general public: why John Gully died, why there was a cover-up. And really, the reason why John Gully died is the reason why Chisolm and his family died, and Bloody Kemper and the Chisolm Massacre. We're going to find out why all of these people ultimately lost their lives, and it's going to blow your mind. Just a second, getting a sip of my coffee. Hold tight. And remember, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You will only get this type of history about our ancestors. You're only going to get it here. You're only going to get it here. Some of this info. Now, I'm not the only person with access to this information, but I'm the only one digging it up, giving it to you guys like this. Okay? I'm the only one doing it. Let's go here, which is it got worse. So remember, we're talking about Chisolm and them got killed. So he said it got worse the Saturday when Mr. Gully was buried. Folks all over Kemper done heard about it by now. And by 9 o'clock Sunday morning, people were coming in over every road that led to DeKalb. They all had loaded guns. It was on a Sunday when all the killing happened. I mean, the winding up killing. I was there for a gun was fired. I was there when the first man was wounded. So the ancestor is telling us he was there the whole time, like not just there. He was on the ground there. He was on the ground when the first person got shot, right? He was there before the first gun got fired. He was there when the first man got shot. He was there when the last man got shot. He was there, right in the thick of it. First-hand primary information. Okay, this is what you call a primary source to the events. Primary source to the events. Okay. He says the colored people had gathered in DeKalb at the Methodist church. They hadn't a gun fired yet. Mr. Henry Gully goes to the colored people's church. He walked in at the front door and took his hat off his head. They were packed in the house for preaching. He walked down the aisle till he got in front of the preacher, and he turned sideways and speak. I want to ask you to dismiss your congregation. There is going to be some trouble take place right here in DeKalb, and I don't want any colored person to get hurt. The preacher rose to his feet. Every nigger in the house were up, and he dismissed them. Mr. Henry Gully was Mr. John Gully's brother and a leading man on the right. Okay, so now we're looking into this political back and forth again. Now remember what I told you guys. The Republicans and the Democrats were fighting each other during the Reconstruction era to get control when there was a power vacuum left in these southern states. And when they're talking about the Reconstruction era, a lot of that was Republicans and Democrats fighting one another for control, and they were using the African Americans basically as pawns to get votes in majority of instances. Okay, now what happened was the brother of John Gully knew that they were coming to get Chisolm. This is before Walter Riley is confessed to the murder. This is before he's arrested. All they know is Saturday they buried John Gully. Sunday, hundreds of people start coming in from all over to murder Chisolm. And the reason why they needed hundreds of people to do it is because, again, Chisolm was a powerhouse in the area and he had a lot of supporters. And so they were expecting that somebody, that it may be like a gunfight. It may be a quote unquote war. Now, the people that's coming in to kill Chisolm, they're the white supremacists. They're the Ku Klux Klan. They're the Democrats. The Democrats were the Ku Klux Klan or the Democrats. Okay, it's crazy, man. But you got to understand that the Democrats and Republicans, how they are viewed today, is not how they were viewed back then. The Democrats were the white supremacists, so they're all coming into town. But also, the Gullies want political power, and so they need to manipulate the black vote to get it. Now, remember, the blacks had gotten upset because the Chisolms were not honoring their promises, their campaign promises. And so they stopped voting for them, and the Democrats began to win. So in order to curry more favor with the black population, when the Ku Klux Klan, the white Democrats, the white supremacists were coming in to murder Judge Chisolm and anybody that got in their way, they went to the blacks that were congregating at church and was like, hey, man, you may want to dismiss church services, not have church today. Y'all may want to go inside y'all houses, close and lock the doors. Why? Because it's a whole lot of Ku Klux Klan members. It's a whole lot of white supremacists, and it's a whole lot of white Democrats coming into town. Everybody strapped. Everybody got guns. Everybody guns is loaded. And when all this shit pop off, they may just start murdering blacks as well, lynching them as well. That's how it went. So he went to curry their favor and tell them, hey, y'all may want to get out of church, save your life. Anyway, he says, the town were a milling with folks from everywhere. Chisolm and them done got into jail for safety, and Miss Cornelia Chisolm went backwards and forwards to the jail. So what happened is the sheriff came with fake warrants, right? Fake warrants written up for the arrest of Judge Chisolm. So they went to his house, and when they went to his house to arrest him, he demanded a trial. He demanded an investigation because he was saying he had nothing to do with it. And the mob were outside of his house with guns and everything. And so they was like, hey, man, either you take him to jail so he could be held accountable for killing John Gully, because they were convinced he killed John Gully, or we just gonna gun him down right here. So after a long standoff and much back and forth, much talking, they ended up getting Chisolm to the jailhouse along with several of his other family members, because his family members didn't want to leave him alone at the time because they knew that they were there to kill him. His wife even tried to get him to, run out the back door, get on his horse and run out and flee. But Judge Chisolm didn't want to flee because he said that was going to make him look more guilty. So they ended up getting him to the jailhouse, and they're saying for safety because the mob was about to gun him down at his house. They were like, hey, if he don't take his ass to jail and be held accountable for what he did to John Gully, we're going to gun him down right here. Anyway, he says they thought she was carrying ammunition in her clothes to her father. Mr. McClendon, he were one of them, were with her twice. he was on the right-hand side. Some believe he was the one that killed Mr. John Gully. Now, check this out. Remember, I told you this was before they had Walter Riley. They were even thinking that it was a man named Mr. McCullum that had killed John Gully for Chisolm. They just felt like Chisolm had something to do with it, so they wanted to get him out the doggone way. So they say they told him they'd burn his house down if he stayed in it, but if he go on to jail, they'd give him a fair trial. Because at first, Chisolm was refusing to leave his house. He was basically saying that he would stay on house arrest at his house while they investigated the murder. But the mob was like, bro, if you don't take your behind to jail to face what you did, you were just gonna murder you right here. And so, because it was hundreds of them out there, they ended up taking himself to jail. So look, they say, well, Mr. McCullum was shot down beside Miss Cornelia. I seen him when he fell on his face. The man that fired the gun turned him over and say, well, us got him. Miss Cornelia run on to the jail where they bounce on the family were, where the balance of the family were. Remember, they got Chisolm in jail. Miss Cornelia, the daughter of Judge Chisolm, is going back and forth to the jail, taking things to her father. And so while this was happening, the murdering started outside the jail, where they were murdering, where they began to murder some of the people who were in league with Chisolm. Now, this Mr. McCullum, who the mob believed actually did the killing on behalf of Chisolm, they gunned him down first, right in front of Chisolm's daughter, Cornelia. And look at the ancestor says, I seen him when he fell on his face. So the ancestor, not only is he in the town, what I'm telling you is he was there when the murdering began. He saw the people being murdered. So when we get the truth from him, we know that he's telling the truth because he was right there. So when that happened, when he gets gunned down, Cornelia, the daughter of Judge Chisolm, she knows that, oh, damn, man, we knew that they wanted to kill my daddy. They done start shooting. They done just gunned down Mr. McCullum. She takes off back towards the jail where the rest of the family is there because, she want to know, oh, they shooting, they killing, they finna kill daddy. What the hell going on? She was a soldier. They say, them outside say, boys, it'll never do. They ain't all in there yet. Let's send to Scuba and get Charlie Rosenbaum and John Gilmore to come help they friends. They belongs to that Chisolm crowd and we want them too. So the mob not only wants to get Judge Chisolm, they want to get everybody that they think was involved. So Mr. McCullum gets gunned down, and some of the mob is like, hey, let's rush to jail now and let's go head on and gun down Chisolm and be done with it. The rest of the people in the mob, they're saying like, no, we don't got all of them yet. We need to get all of the movers and shakers and we need to wipe them all out. Rosenbaum ain't here and Gilmore ain't here. We need the rest of his friends to be here so we can murder them all at the same time. So they sent somebody to a place called Scuba to get Charlie Rosenbaum and John Gilmore so that they could kill them too. They wanted to kill them all. Now, look what the ancestor is mentioning names. Cornelia, we know that's the daughter, Charlie Rosenbaum, and John Gilmore. Okay, hold on just a second. Look. Now, when you look into the record, look at the names. Look, about right here where the hand is moving, about 2:00 p.m., J.P. Gilmer and C. Rosenbaum, for whom the sheriff held a warrant, were reported near the town and ready to surrender to the officers. So even in the official record, I'm showing you that the ancestor was giving us accurate history because he's giving you the names of some of the other people. the sheriff had created a fake warrant for Judge Chisolm and a fake warrant for Gilmer and Rosenbaum, because these were some of the other people that they wanted to kill as well. This is what the ancestor is talking about. And this is how we know the ancestor is telling the truth. This is, I mean, these slave narratives, this oral history, this is real history. It's accurate history, family, that we just not looking at. But you can get it right here. Subscribe to the channel. You can get it right here. I break it all down for you. I give you all of the key players. Look, he says, let's send to Scuba and get Charlie Rosenbaum and John Gilmore to come help their friends. They belongs to that Chisolm crowd, and we want them too. Accurate history given by the ancestor. So they come. Somebody say, let's commence right here. I never seen a battle before, but I sure seen one then. So he's seen this happen. It was like this. Mr. Carl Hull was the only Democrat white friend Mr. Rosenbaum had. He stood between his white Democrat friends and Mr. Rosenbaum. He put his arms over Mr. Rosenbaum and say, boys, he's a friend of mine. If you kill him, you kill me. Mr. Rosenbaum crawled over to the courthouse wall and squatted down and stayed there. Mr. Hull stood over him, protecting him. So now they ready to commence the murder because they got all of the targets there. And so one of the white Democrats, the white supremacist Democrat, was a friend of Mr. Rosenbaum and was like, man, look, I know y'all here to do some murdering. Please don't kill Rosenbaum, man. He's a friend of mine. And so he was trying to protect him with his own body while he crawled over to the courthouse wall and squatted down and, cowering in fear. Who wouldn't cower in fear when you got 100 people with guns pointed at you? But look, then they say, but Mr. John Gilmore make for the jail. And when they opened the door for him, the shooting started. So that's John Gilmore. That's the man that the ancestor mentioned. He was mentioned in the historical record. That's when the shooting started, when they tried to open the door for the jail for him. Right then, when Mr. Gilmore got hit, Miss Cornelia was struck in the wrist. It mortified, and after a while, she died from it. So look, so Miss Cornelia, she's the daughter, man, the daughter of Judge Chisolm. She ran back to the jail when she seen old boy get hit in the street. She ran back to try to protect her daddy. Now look, the ancestor says that she got struck in the wrist. This how you know it was right there, because she damn sure did get struck in the wrist. But she didn't just get struck in the wrist. I'm gonna show you something. She got hit trying to protect her daddy. She was a real one. I gotta give it to her, man. I gotta give it to her. She got hit trying to protect her daddy. Watch this. Hold on. See, we gotta give her her card, man. I hate that happened. Don't get me wrong. Because when it was all said and done, these people didn't have nothing to do. They didn't have nothing to do with Chisolm getting hit. I mean, they didn't have nothing to do with Gully getting hit, man. And Walter Riley did that. And we're gonna see why in just a second. We're building up. We're gonna see why in just a second. These were literally innocent people that died. And they're still hiding the true story right now today. I gotta unravel this mystery using the words of the ancestors. Look, check this out. We're gonna look at his daughter. Look, check this out. Right here, I don't know if you can see this move, and it says Papa. Let me try to. Right there is where I'm gonna be starting at. Right inside that square where it says Papa. Okay. And this is the daughter talking. This is how she died, according to the newspapers. Papa, they have fired the jail. It is better to be shot to death than burned to death, trying to force him out. Or it turns out that was a lie. They lied and said that they set the jail on fire in order to get Chisolm and everybody to come out so that they could gun him down. But that turns out to be a lie. But anyway, Papa, they have fired the jail. It is better to be shot to death than burned to death. The judge, Judge Chisolm, putting his arms around his daughter, tried to persuade her to leave him, saying he would remain there and die alone, assuring her that he was innocent of having any knowledge of or taking any part in the killing of Gully, as she was herself. So you can see the scene. They rushing to jail. Guns is going off. They setting the jail on fire. He knows he's about to die. He's telling his daughter, as anybody would, daughter, just leave, just leave. They want me. They want me. Let me die alone. But just know, clear my name. I'm innocent. I'm innocent. But Cornelia, the daughter, look what it say. She refused to leave him. She stood by her daddy's side. She refused to leave him, and throwing her right arm around his neck, pay attention, throwing her right arm around his neck and protecting him as well as she could with her person, her own damn body, proceeded with him downstairs in the face of the mob. When near the front of the stairway, they were fired upon, one ball striking a heavy gold bracelet on Miss Cornelia's right arm. What do you wear a bracelet, family? On your wrist. Driving the pieces through. A load of duck shot entered her left leg below the knee, and a ball striking her in the thigh, she fell and was struck by one of the mob in the face and on the head with his fist or the end of a pistol, terribly blackening one of her eyes and bruising her forehead. So when they came for her daddy, she put her right arm around her daddy and she tried to block him with her own body. When she seen the mob with guns, she already seen somebody get killed. She loved her daddy so much, she blocked him with her own body. And the mob, they let loose. They boom, boom, boom. They start firing. One of the shots strike her. She got a heavy gold bracelet on her right arm. Boom, the bullet hit the bracelet, hit her wrist, drive some of the pieces through her wrist. They shoot her in her leg, her left leg, just below the knee, and she get hit in her thigh. So she get hit like 3 times right off the bat. Boom, boom, boom. She fall to the ground. And then one of the white supremacists, they run up to her and they basically strike her in the face and in the head with his fist or the end of a pistol, probably pistol whipped her and punched her, blacked her eyes and bruised her forehead. Now, then they start shooting, they gunned down her daddy. Now, she didn't die right then and there. Look, right where it says 15 or more. 15 or more of the mob followed for some distance and made several attempts to shoot, but Miss Cornelia, with her face and clothes covered with blood and with her shattered arm dangling at her side, threw herself between these infuriated demons and her father and implored them not to pursue their bloody work, that her father was dead or dying, and begged them to at least spare his body to those who loved him. So even after being shot, she fell down. Boom, they fired her up 3 times. She fell down, she bloody, she in pain. They fire on her old man. They mortally wound him. And so there's some more chaos. And so now they trying to get her daddy dying, but he ain't dead yet, but they trying to get his body. They trying to get him up out of there. And so the mob following, right? The mob following, they got more pistols. And the girl, even though she's bloody and bruised and shot, she's still trying to protect her daddy. She get between her daddy body and the mob again. And she like, man, look, y'all done already shot him. You know, he's dead or he's dying. He can't survive. At least give us the dignity of keeping his body. Let us get his body. And so they got Judge Chisolm. They took his body back home, and the physicians tried to tend to him, but there wasn't no saving him. He eventually died. And Cornelia, his daughter, she eventually died from from her wounds as well. You know, look, upon arriving at home, the Judge Chisolm, was found to be still living, and Dr. McCallaghan, who was the next door neighbor, did everything he could to resuscitate the judge and to relieve the sufferings of his noble daughter. But they both ended up dying, unfortunately. And so we see again what the ancestor said is accurate. He says Miss Cornelia was struck in the wrist. It mortified, and after a while, she died from it. Remember, she got shot in the bracelet on her right arm, shot in her wrist. She didn't immediately die because she got up and she helped get her daddy body to safety. You know, damn, man, this is crazy what happened. And it's even crazier why it happened. But look, let's go on with the tale. Now check this out. Check this out, family. Here we go. This what I held you this long for. Thanks for staying with me. I know I ain't told the show enough reason Mr. John Gully got killed. Maybe the time done come for the truth to be told. Hope won't nobody think hard of me for telling. So basically, you know, this individual, Sam McCullum, you know, he's old, he's telling the story, he's seeing it with his own eyes, and he knows the whole time why John Gully died. He knows why the Chisolms died. And so he ain't never said nothing. And nobody else that possibly knew the real reason, they ain't never said nothing neither. And so he like, you know what? Maybe it's time for the truth to be told. And it is time for the truth to be told. We need to unravel this 147-year-old mystery. The truth that has not been told, the truth that has been buried beneath conspiracies of white Democratic KKK white supremacists, the truth that they buried, we need to unbury that and shine the light of truth on it. So why did John Gully die, and why did the Chisolm die? Crazy, crazy, crazy. Watch this, family. Your ancestors about to tell us the truth. Let's unravel this mystery. Our ancestral oral histories can unravel the mystery of the bloody Kemper Chisolm massacre. Look, he says, Mr. John Gully had a barroom and a clerk. A white man by the name of Bob Dabbs walked behind that counter. Remember, first look, so John Gully, he had a barroom and a clerk, so he owned a business. And so he's telling us that a white man by the name of Bob Dabbs walked behind the counter. Stop right there. Why is the name Bob Dabbs important? Remember, I told you guys that I was going to break this down a little later. But remember, Walter Riley confessed to 2 murders, right? He confessed. Where is it at? He confessed to 2 murders. I might not be able to find it, but it was Dabbs and Gully. It was Dabbs and Gully. Those were the 2 murders that he confessed to. Remember, when he was going to the gallows, and he was going to be hung, he said that he killed these 2 people on his own. And I said that I wasn't going to tell you who the other guy was. I was going to let the ancestor tell you. But that was the name of the other guy. We finna find out what that was all about, because the newspaper they don't tell you. They don't tell you. Okay, there you go. They don't tell you why he murdered him. But I'm gonna tell you. That what ancestor gonna tell you. Let's find it. Just bear with me. Bear with me. This is all interesting. This is what I want to show y'all. I want y'all to be with me. Oh, man. Took me right back up to the top. That's all right. That's all right. We got time. We got time. We got time, family. Hold on. I lost it. I lost it. I lost the spot. Hold on. I tried to get too fancy. All right, there you go. I'm not gonna try to zoom in again, but right where I'm moving at, right, see where it's highlighted, John W. Gully. This the paragraph. Go to the beginning of that paragraph. It says the prisoner. The prisoner here exhorted at great length and several times repeated his confession of having killed Bob Dabbs in 1871, the crime for which he was convicted, and John W. Gully last April then kneeled and offered a fervent prayer. So he confessed to killing two people. He said in 1871 he killed somebody named Bob Dabbs, and then in 1877 he killed somebody named John Gully. And when they asked, he said, man, I heard John Gully was after me. That's why I murdered him. I heard he was after me. So he murdered two people. Now let's look at why he murdered those two people. I just want to show y'all that this is in the newspapers. This is a historical record, and the ancestor gives us accurate details. Look, check this out. He says, Mr. John Gully had a barroom and a clerk. A white man by the name of Bob Dabbs walked behind that counter. This nigga, Walter Riley, I was telling you about a while ago, were courting a yellow woman. There weren't so many of them in them days. So this is a high yellow. He got him a yellow bone, right? He got him a yellow bone. Now this is crazy because Walter Riley got a wife and children in Tennessee, mind you. He got a wife and children in Tennessee, but he's down here in Mississippi courting a yellow woman. Now he admitted when he was about to be murdered that he wasn't a good man. He said he was a bad man, and that led him to what he got himself caught up into. So, we're not gonna judge him. He already just confessing. So look, Mr. Dabbs say, Walter, if I ever catch you walking with, he called that yellow woman's name. If I ever catch you walking with her, I'll give you the worst beating ever was. Walter was catch with her again. That Friday night, he come strutting into the barroom. Mr. Dabbs say, come help me move these boxes here in the next room. Walker walked in like a nigga will when you ask him to do something, and Mr. Dabbs turned the key. Get across that goods box, he say. I'll give you what I promised you. Mr. Dabbs got him a piece of plank and burnt Walter up. So we have Walter Riley, right? We have him courting some high yellow woman. Now, apparently he's frequenting this bar that John Gully owns. And this bar is run by a man named Bob Dabbs. So Bob Dabbs see Walter Riley, the mulatto, courting this yellow woman. He's mad. Obviously, he must like this yellow woman, right? He must have some kind of feelings for her, but she feeling Walter Riley, the mulatto, the high yellow dude, probably. And so he threatened him and tell him, hey, man, I've been seeing you hanging with this high yellow woman, call her name. If I see you doing it again, I'm going to beat you. So Walter, he keep, how it is. He keep hanging with the woman. He ain't studying Bob Dabbs. He keep fooling with her. He keep messing with her. So one Friday, he coming strutting into the bar room. He finna get him something to drink. Mr. Dabbs tricked him and was like, hey man, help me move these boxes into this next room. They moved the boxes into the back room, and then Mr. Dale, he locked the door. Click, click. He say, hey, lay across that goods box. I'm finna give you what I promised you. And so, still, even after slavery, still being subjected to the orders of white men and white women, Walter, he lay across the box. Oh, Mr. Bob Dabbs get a piece of plank and burn him up. He beat him good. And check this out. All this here was going on by the time niggas were voting and doing things around white folks. They thought they were protected by the Chisolm crowd. So again, this is the Reconstruction era. He's mentioning this time of voting. He's saying that all of this was going on during all of this political stuff. And he say that the blacks thought they were protected by the Chisolm crowd, which is why Walter Riley kind of felt emboldened when Dabbs told him to stop doing something, stop messing with the woman. He kept messing with her. He feeling like, man, look, man, we free. We voting. We got it good. You can't tell me who to talk to. But the guy wasn't with the Chisolm crowd. He wasn't with the, trying to get the black folks some type of respectability. He was running with the Democrat, John Gully, and the white supremacists. This guy was a full-blown white supremacist. And I told you, the KKK, the white supremacists, the patty rollers, they all one and the same. So he felt like it wasn't nothing to beat a black man. Anyway, the ancestor says, the next Friday night, Walter walked right into that bar room again. Mr. Dabbs say, what you doing here, nigga? Walter say, you remember what you done to me tonight 1 week ago? And he say, well, what's to it? Then Walter say, well, I come to settle with you. Mr. Dabbs say, let me see if I can't hurry you up some. And he reached his hand back, his hand to his hip. But before he could draw out, Walter done run back to the door. So on one Friday, Walter gets beat. He leaves. He's gone for a week. So, he's chilling, he's drinking, he's thinking about it. Now, normally a black man would have to take that type of a beating from a white man. But Walter, obviously, he wasn't the type to having it. So he thought about it. He was like, you know what? I'm not finna play with this guy. He got his hands on a pistol. He come back the next week, he walk in. Dobbs is like, hey, what you doing here? He tell him, hey, man, remember what you did to me last week? Well, I came here to settle that. He came in like a man. I got to respect him for this part. He came in like a man and was like, well, I'm here to settle that with you. And so Mr. Dabbs, hey, he about that killer black man life too. He's a stone cold white supremacist. He ain't back down. He say, well, let me see if I can't hurry it up for you. So he reached behind himself. He reached to his hip to grab his pistol. It's like, showdown at the OK Saloon. Meet you at high noon. Two men standing up, both men strapped. Who get to their gun first? So when the white guy, Bob Dabbs, reached for his pistol, boom, Walter run back out the door. Right? He run back out the door. And look what the ancestors say. They were a China berry tree close to the door, and Walter got behind it and fired a pistol. Mr. Dabbs was hit with his arm or laying across the counter with his pistol in his hand. So Walter, he runs out. He gets up position behind a China berry tree to protect himself. He pulled out his pistol. Boom. He point back towards the door. Boom, boom. He fires in, right? He fires at Bob Dabbs. He hit him. He stretched Bob Dabbs out on the counter. Bob Dabbs still got his pistol in his hand. His arms flayed out. Boom. He lay him out. He lay him out on the counter. He smoking. So look, then he say, the ancestor says, me and Mr. Ed Arlums, Mick Arlums, because he was the jailer. Mr. Ed McCullum was the jailer and the ancestor worked for him. We put him on a mattress in the room back of the bar, and he died that night. the word just kind of got round that some of the Chisolm crowd done killed Mr. Gully's clerk. So what happened? Now look, the ancestor, he's there. He was there for the Chisolm massacres, which is about to happen later. But he's also there when this man Dabbs get gunned down. Now, I don't know if he's there when he got gunned down, but he's there and he takes the body of Bob Dabb. He takes him into the back with the jailer and they lay him down on a mattress because he's hit, but he ends up dying. And so word just gets around. Like, remember, it was beef between the Chisolms and the Gullys, their two particular crowd. So when Gully's man gets gunned down in the bar, just rumors start that one of the Chisholm's crowd done killed Mr. Gully's clerk. But really, it was Walter. So look, check this out. Walter run off to Memphis, Tennessee. Remember, he has a wife and children in Tennessee. Remember from the newspaper articles, and he said that he only came back from Tennessee because he was working on the railroads. So after he murks him, he goes on the run. He goes up to Tennessee with his family. Now look, Mr. Gully was pursuing after him to catch him. Walter sure got tired of him pursuing after him. That were the evidence Walter give out for they put the rope on his neck and start him on his way to the gallows. But tweren't nobody there to put it down just like it were. Remember, when I read to you Walter Riley about to be killed, and they asked him, why did you kill John Gully? Why did you kill him? He said, because I heard he was after me. What did that mean? He heard that he was after him because he had killed Dog. Look, Walter ran off to Memphis and Mr. Gully was pursuing after him. Basically, like, not he went to Tennessee looking for him, but he was just looking for him because he found out that, okay, Walter Riley killed Bob Dabb. So he was looking for him, basically let him know, hey, whenever I see him, I'm going to get him. I'm going to make him pay for killing my boy, killing my clerk, killing my fellow Democrat white supremacists. Now, this happened in 71. So Walter is on the run for about 6 years. He gone for about 6 years, but the whole time, Mr. Gully and probably some of his associates, they want Walter head because he's a black man that just killed a white man. They want him. Okay, they want him. And look, the answer even said that was the evidence that Walter gave out before they put the rope on his neck. But nobody wanted to hear that. Nobody was listening. Nobody put that down in the official record because they wanted to blame the Chisolms. So when Walter Riley said he killed him because he was after him, he heard that he was after him. He heard that John Gully was after him because he killed Bob Dabb, the other man that he killed. So he said he killed them all on his own. So check this out. At the end of the day, family, it was all over a woman. Ain't that something? It was all over a high yellow woman. That was the root cause of all of the murder. Walter was messing with this woman. Bob Dabb didn't want him to mess with this woman, so he beat him for messing with this woman. Walter came back, killed Bob Dabb for beating him. John Gully was looking for Walter, so when Walter came back in town working on the railroad and he heard that Gully was after him, he just heard he was after him, so he got his hands on a pistol. He hid out in the bushes. He caught John Gully, probably going from work, going home that night, ambushed him, boom, shot him, took his hat, took his boots, took his money, and boom, burned off again. And then they eventually got him. You know, they got him and convicted him for killing Bob Dabb, right? Because he did that in front of everybody. And then he confessed to killing John Gully as well. But in the interim of him killing Gully for pursuing him over murdering Dabb, right? They blamed Chisolm for it. and they killed Chisolm, his daughter, his son, and several other of his acquaintances. And so after they erroneously murdered that man and his family, and then Walter confessed to it, nobody wanted to take his confession, because then they would have to admit that they have to punish the people that killed Judge Chisolm. And all of this, family, stems back to a woman. Crazy. The ancestor says, Mr. Sinclair was sheriff by this time, and my young master and me went with him to get Walter to take him to the gallows. So this ancestor actually went to get Walter to take him to the gallows. Now, don't be confused about him calling him young master in 77, because even after slavery ended, a lot of our ancestors, especially the ones that was born during slavery time, they still referred to white people this way, and especially the ones that they worked for this way. Anyway, Mr. Sinclair, the sheriff, say, Ed, you going to the jailhouse now? Who is Ed? Ed McCullum, who the ancestor was working for, the jailer. So the sheriff is telling the jailer, here's a half pint of whiskey. Give it to Walter. Make him happy. Then if he talk too much, nobody will believe it. Why did he want him to do that? Because Walter had already told him, this is how the ancestor heard it, and already told him, hey, I murked him because he was looking for me. I killed John Gully because he was looking for me. Nobody else had anything to do with it. So to try to discredit him and have him talking and slurring and sounding crazy, they tried to get him drunk on his way to the gallows. So if he did confess to just everything, and he said something that went against the conspiracy narrative, nobody will believe him. So Mr. Ed say, come on, Sambo. Sambo is the ancestor giving this narrative. Come on, Sambo, go with me. He reached down and got a handful of gobbers and put them in his pocket, of goobers, and put them in his pocket. We were eating them on the way down to the jailhouse. He say, Walter, Mr. Sinclair done sent you a dram of whiskey. Walter say, Mr. McCullum, I see you and Sam eating peanuts coming along. Just you give me a handful and I'll eat them on the way to the gallows. I don't want no whiskey. And we know he didn't drink no whiskey because the official report in the newspaper says that he was speaking intelligently and coherently when they were questioning him for over 2 hours before he was killed. And we see a first-hand account, the ancestor actually was in contact with Walter before he went to the gallows. This is how he knows that he was there for it all. He was there in the bar when the man got killed that Walter killed, right? He was right there in the area when John Gully got killed. He was there when Judge Chisolm got killed, and so he has the accurate information. Look, he says, Dennis got the wagon. I can see Walter now standing there with his cap on the back of his head, ready to pull down over his eyes after he get there. They were a powerful crowd round that wagon. Then come a rider from Scuba, pull a paper from his pocket and hand it to Mr. Sinclair. He read it and say, let the people go on to the gallows, the wagon turn around and go back to the jail. The governor had stopped the hanging till the case were investigated. The people standing there awaiting for Walter to be hung didn't know what were the matter. All of those hundreds of people that were mentioned in the newspaper. He says they placed Walter back in jail and his coffin along with him. The lawyers would visit him to get his testimony. They showed him his coffin already and asked him, did he do this killing or not? They want him to say he was hired to do it. They fixed it all up. Twer't nobody to tell just how it were. So they manipulated the story and they pushed out the narrative that he did the killing on behalf of the Chisoms, and there was nobody there to tell the truth of why he really killed John Gully. And so the ancestor ends up telling us about the rest of his life, the rest of his life story, about him getting married and about him having children. Okay. And so he says, after he talks about his family and whatnot, maybe folks going to think hard on me for telling what I ain't never told before. I've been asked to tell what I seen and I done it. That's telling what I never thought to tell. So the last words he says in his narrative, in his oral history, is that he felt that people will probably be upset with him for telling the truth about what happened, and telling the truth that they murdered an innocent man and his family, Judge Chisolm. But he says he told the truth that he had never told before this day, and he had been asked to tell it. Apparently, when the interviewer heard that he was in such a key location, they asked him what information did he have on that massacre. And so he told them, knowing he was old and he wanted the truth to finally come out. And so he told the truth. And so we have the truth to this day. And so we have been looking, thank you all for watching. So we have been looking at the Mississippi slave narrative / the oral histories of ancestor Sam McCullum. And we have been looking at the true history of Bloody Kemper being revealed for the very first time. So this has been Bloody Kemper, the Chisolm Massacre, Mississippi slave narratives, oral history, reveal the facts and unravels a 147-year-old murder mystery. Now, the image that you're looking at, that's the image of, that's a picture, a drawing of Judge Chisolm and his daughter being gunned down inside of the jail. Remember, she blocked him with her hand and her body. She received several shots, and he received several shots as well. And until today, the narrative has been that Judge Chisolm has something to do with the murder of John Gully. But now we know, based on the oral histories of our ancestors, that Judge Chisolm was indeed an innocent man, just like he said he was. He died for no reason. His daughter died for no reason. His son died for no reason. And the other individuals that were murdered, they died for no reason as well. And all of this murder of the Chisolms stemmed from the murder of John Gully. And the murder of John Gully stemmed from the murder of Bob Dabbs. And the murder of Bob Dabbs stemmed from him beating Walter Riley, and he beat Walter Riley for talking to a high yellow woman. And so all of this murder was because a man named Bob Dabbs did not want to see Walter Riley talking to a high yellow woman. So if you ever hear about Bloody Kemper, if you ever hear about the Chisolm Massacre, you now know what it all sprang from and what it was all about. I thank you guys for watching. This has been another episode of Matthew Daniels TV. And again, on this channel, we like to look into African American history, specifically during the time period of our enslavement and immediately after. And we are doing this in our own unique way that you cannot find anywhere else on YouTube. We examine this history from the perspective and words of our ancestors themselves. We look at what they had to say. We look at the records that they left, and we analyze history from their perspective. I want you guys to like this video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. And again, if you would like to support anybody that would like to support this channel, and you appreciate me taking the time to put this information together, Remember, I am a published author. I'm one of the greatest scribes of our lifetime. I have 16 published works out. And so if you like to read, you can support me and support the channel by purchasing one of my novels. I have 16 out. You don't have to purchase them all, but you can start with this one. This is an urban fiction novel written by me called Suicide Note. Suicide Note by Matthew Daniels. You can go to Amazon.com, type in Suicide Note by Matthew Daniels, and you can order you a copy. What I'm going to do real quick before I get out of here, I'm going to put the link to the book in the chat. You can go and read the synopsis and order your copy. Okay, you can read the synopsis and order your copy of Suicide Note by Matthew Daniels. My phone acting up. Give me just a second. Oh man, I hate when it do this. It's not letting me. I'm trying to put the link from my phone. Let me just do it like this. I'll just do it from the computer. How about that? You're more than welcome. Thank you for watching. Thank you for tapping in. Okay, there we go. All right, that link that I just shared, that's the link to my book, Suicide Note. I appreciate it. You can order it, read it, and leave me some kind of comment. Real quick before I get out of here, we got another comment. You're more than welcome, Sandra Askew. Thank you for tapping in. And Bigfoot say, by the way, tap in with me, grab my number from Quinoa. Shout out to Cole Figure, man. Someone I want to link you up with across the pond. You two are powerhouses in this book world and knowledge. Okay, definitely. I'll link up with him this weekend, Bigfoot. I'm gonna link up with him this weekend, and we're gonna look into that. Definitely. So again, this has been another episode of Matthew Daniels TV. I'm your host, Matthew Daniels, the writer, author, scribe, and bookworm. But I'm not just a bookworm world. I am the real bookworm. Make sure you get it right. And as always, may your name live on forever, and may your memory family, never die. I'm out.